Guys, we had a great week 3 with guys like Mike Evans, Phillip, Lindsey, and Kyle Allen being some of our great calls. We're hoping to do it again this week. Stay tuned.
Fantasy football, you dealing with the best. Keep it hype, authentic, this ain't nothing like the rest. With the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, give advice for all the listeners to improve your stats. Yeah, we live on GoingFor2.com. Tuesdays and Fridays, this is what you want. Talking dynasties and daily drafts, and we just getting started, that ain't even the half. Yeah, so go ahead, tell your friends to join. Going for 2, cause no one remembers the extra point. Hey, GoingFor2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show.
Going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 105 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Geoff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at GeoffLambert77. We are here every Tuesday and Friday night on Facebook Live, Periscope, and YouTube. We are also, of course, syndicated on all your major podcast networks and streaming in the GoingFor2 app for iOS and Android. I'm here, as always, with my co-hosts. First up, we got Mr. Gerson. How you doing tonight, Gerson?
I'm doing pretty good. Had a pretty good week 3. We're now on week 4.
We're on week 4, yep.
Yeah, it was a great week. Cashed 81 out of my 150 roster. Of course, it's just we nailed so many calls. We did so good, but overall, I mean, solid week. And I just I always tell people we name all these plays, but can't play them all. I play them all.
Yeah, you can play them all because you play enough rosters to play them all. I can't play them all. I think I had 10 rosters this past weekend, so I didn't get them all in. But good enough that I was able to cash, at least my cash game cash, and I had at least one min cash GPP, so turned out okay. So Gerson's a trooper tonight, man. Right before the show, he texted me and said he was sick, and he went in and he threw up, and then he came back out, and now he's doing the show. So appreciate you being on the show, man, even though you're sick. Tonight will be a true sick call for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Also joining us, of course, is the Packers fan who I'm sure is pretty upset about last night's game. Tim Strobel, man, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, it was a rough day, man. A lot of my coworkers know I'm a Packers fan, so they were kind of trolling me at work. But like Gerson, last week I had a real good week. As he mentioned, we had a lot of plays hit. So, I always like that. We give out advice and it hits. So bring it ready for another night.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, your sick call was like, it was amazing. You called out Phillip Lindsey, and not only was he a good call, but, he was in the top lineup in the Millie Maker, I believe. So great call on Phillip Lindsey for sure. That was awesome. All right, guys.
Yeah, man. I liked him, but I didn't see a 7 times value kind of week coming, I'll be honest.
Right.
Yeah, I had some exposure to him, but I think we all wish we had more, right?
Yep, exactly.
It's a new record because the last record that held the most time value for this time value of the player for the sick call of the week was the New Army thing, but Tim
blew it away. Yep, Tim blew it away. Took the cake with that one. Yeah, I had, of course, it wasn't my sick call, but I had Mike Evans. That was my, sort of my game breaker. He, had 3 TDs and just broke the slate for me. He was all over the place, so that was a great call. And, of course, Kyle Allen, y'all sold me on him, so I played him in my cash lineup, so it ended up working out for me because I had Keenan Allen, I had Christian McCaffrey, I had Kyle Allen in my cash lineup, so it ended up being not good for me as well. All right, guys, let's go ahead and just jump straight into the slate now. We'll kick off with the quarterbacks, and really the top tier quarterbacks is just it's singular. It's top tier quarterback because there's not a whole lot there. Tim, I think you have 2 guys listed there, so we'll go to you first. Give us the guy that we don't all have.
All right, Lamar Jackson. I think this sets up as a good spot for him. Obviously, he's had really good weeks nearly every week so far. I don't really need to tell you to play Lamar or the other guy we're going to mention. But I think, Mahomes is going to see a lot more ownership than Lamar, so I really like him as a pivot. But I think this really sets up as a good play. Denzel Ward, corner for the Browns, is going to be out this week, so I think that sets up even better. They're having a lot of injuries in the defensive backfield for the Browns, so I think that sets up good with Lamar. And then, of course, he can always get you that rushing bonus on the ground as well. So overall, man, I just think this is going to be a great week for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I agree. He's a great pivot off of the guy that, obviously Patrick Mahomes is the guy we're talking about. He's the one that's sort of above and beyond most of the elite high-priced quarterbacks this week. Gerson, give us some stuff on Mahomes and why you think he should be in some GPP lineups this week.
Oh, is he the other quarterback you guys were talking about?
Yeah.
No, he's 7,500, but he had an ownership of 14.5. I mean, basically the second highest owned quarterback, and the number one is obviously a value quarterback, but projected for almost 25 points, and he has a tough matchup, 10th overall DVOA, but really in reality, Mahomes matchup proof. That matchup, I mean, 55 over under, that's pretty insane. I mean, it's gonna happen all year, so get used to it.
Yep.
So under Matt Patricia, the Lions have allowed multiple touchdowns, 12 out of 19, and then in 5 of them, they actually allowed 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, this is Matt Patricia's defense that was a Patriots defensive coordinator, but this is Mahomes. I think Mahomes will do just fine. I don't know what the latest on Darius Slay. Darius Slay, right? Is that his name?
Yep.
Darius Slay, if he's dealing with a hamstring injury, if he's out, Mahomes gonna have a field day because that's one of their key guys in their defensive secondary. And Mahomes right now is averaging an 8.77% touchdown rate, which is just slightly above his last year. So I mean, threw 55 touchdowns last year. So obviously he's a smash call. So yeah, play him.
Yep, definitely. The only thing I would say though, and I talked about this a little bit before the show, is the Chiefs now become the Rams. I mean, last year it was like, you stack Mahomes, you stack Tyreek Hill, you stack Kelsey, and that's it. This year they got Robinson, they got Watkins, they got Hardman. It's like, which guy are you going to stack him with this week? Is it going to be just Kelsey every week, or are you going to just kind of shoot your load there for one of those receivers?
Shoot your load?
Yeah.
Hey, man, I got to say, I know Gerson probably does the same thing. I like to look at projections from multiple different sites. I don't necessarily plug them in, but I just like to see where everybody's at. And a couple sites have Mahomes, even though he's the highest price quarterback. I saw some projections had him as the highest value quarterback as well. So, I mean, there's just very few quarterbacks that can give you a floor, in the high 20s. You're talking about projections of 27 to 30. So, I mean, it's going to be hard for me not to have really high exposure to Pat Mahomes this week.
One of the interesting things about Mahomes too that I found out, I think Mike Tagley on Fantasy Pro said it on his podcast. He said that this is the first indoor stadium, dome game for Mahomes in his career. Obviously, he's only been playing for 1 year and 2 games or whatnot. So this is a new environment for him, but I think he'll do just as good. I mean, when you're playing in a stadium, not worse than an outdoors, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. It doesn't get worse to play inside; it gets better, if anything.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to some of those mid-tier quarterbacks. Tim, we'll go to you first. Who do you got for some of your mid-tiers?
All right, first guy, I tell you what, I'm going to leave the guy I know Gerson wants to talk about. So I'm going to go to Deshaun Watson. I really like him a lot this week. I know that he's, he's the same as I mentioned with Lamar Jackson. I think he's got great rushing upside. But I also think that this sets up a great bounce-back spot for them. He's at home. He's obviously played better at home. Yes, they're still having some offensive line problems. But we know that this Carolina secondary can get torched by, great receivers. And obviously he's got one of the best in the league. So I'll mention it later when we talk about wide receivers, but I'm definitely going back to Deshaun Watson in some of my lineups this week.
Good stuff. All right, Gerson, what you got for your favorite mid-tier guy there? I know that's the one that Tim was leaving for you because you've been talking about him all day.
Well, my favorite one is not probably the one that he wants me to mention, but Matt Ryan is a quarterback, 5,900, 3.8% ownership projected. He's projected for 20 points. I mean, that's pretty high for 5,900. Overall, Matt Ryan is at home, and Atlanta has a 25-point implied total. Tennessee, everybody kind of always says that they're a tough team, they're kind of slower pace. They're boring, a boring team to face because they're not going to match up with your pace. But Matt Ryan at home the last 2 years have averaged 24.16 points per game, fantasy points, of course, 308 yards and 2.3 touchdowns. What was really crazy, 71% completion percentage. I thought that was a pretty good percentage. I mean, overall, home quarterback on his own turf, and his wide receivers against Adoree Jackson are going to rip him a new one. And as we know, I mean, Austin Hooper has gone a lot more involved this year. But overall, that matchup with those two wide receivers that are just going to tear up Tennessee, I mean, they're not going to run on them. They're a pretty stout run defense, and the way you beat Tennessee is through the air.
Yeah, good point. Do you want to go ahead and mention the other guy we were talking about, too, the other mid-tier you got?
I mean, Russell Wilson. Everybody's going to play him. I mean, your neighbor's going to play him, your little sister, your little brother, your older brother, your older sister. Everybody's going to play him. I mean, he's going to be the highest owned quarterback, in my opinion. Overall, his projection is about 23 point. I have him 23.2, so that's pretty high for a 6,100 DraftKings price. 26 implied total. That's pretty good. Overall, Wilson has struggled against the Cardinals. Last year, he had two very horrible games, I would call it. But this Cardinals defense is horrendous. I mean, they're down their two cornerbacks. They're down their safeties. Kyle Allen went out there and looked like Peyton Manning. I mean, he looked really good, and I'm glad we were all over him. But Wilson, and this is incredible because we all know Wilson kind of like not a quarterback to throw the ball a lot, right? He just throws a little bit like 20, 25 passes a game, you know?
Till last game.
Until last week. Well, not even that. The week before that. I mean, he threw 35 attempts the week before that. Last week, he threw 50 attempts. And that offensive pace of the Cardinals is only going to not going to tell him. They're going to do the same thing, I believe. I mean, he's going to have to throw the ball, and the Cardinals have allowed the opposing team to run 211 plays against them total this season. That's the second highest next to, I believe, Miami because they're the worst. I can't it's just it makes sense, right? Like Cardinal, high pace, shit defense. I mean, Russell Wilson's on fire right now. I mean, that pissed me off because I lost to one of the guys that I hate the most in my season-long team just based on Russell Wilson. So I was mad because I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to win. And then he had Terry McLaurin coming in for Monday. And then I was like, yeah, Terry's going to have a good game. I lost. But Cardinals have yet to intercept a ball. So, I mean, I don't see it in this game. If they do, it's like, because Russell Wilson's one of the most conservative quarterbacks in the league. But they've already allowed 9 passing touchdowns to quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford, Lamar Jackson, and Kyle Allen.
Yep.
Kyle Allen, guys.
Kyle Allen, the superstar Kyle Allen. All right, I got one more to add to that list, and that's the quarterback on the other side of that game. That's Kyler Murray. We finally saw last week. I mean, he struggled in the passing game, but he finally ran. You know, he did get sacked 8 times, but he had 8 attempts for 69 yards, so that's going to increase his floor, obviously. And then if he can combine that, if he can have the games that he had earlier in the season with the 300-plus passing yards plus the rushing, I think he can definitely be a sneaky play there. I think Seattle's not great against the pass. Their secondary struggles a little bit. They do have a pretty stout front end, a front seven, so I think that they're going to have to pass quite a bit. Murray will have to take off quite a bit, too, because Seattle will pressure him a little bit, so I think that he has that floor with the running. And then if he can get a 250, 300 passing game as well and a couple touchdowns, he can be a smash spot there for $6,000 on DraftKings. So he's my other mid-tier value that we hadn't mentioned yet.
I got one more before we move on, if I can.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
All right, it's Jared Goff. I feel like we can't skip over this play. I like him a lot this week, and it's for 2 reasons. One, I know back in the day we used to talk about Breed home and road splits and Ben home and road splits. Well, Jared Goff's got some pretty significant home and road splits, too. He's averaging 25 DK points at home and 15 DK points on the road. And he gets a matchup against Tampa Bay, which is currently second in the league DVOA against rushing. So I think this is a game they're going to have to throw in order to win, and I think it sets up really well for him. We'll talk later about some guys that I want to stack him with. But, as Gerson mentioned, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be playing Russell Wilson, and for good reason. But for a couple $100 more, I think you can get Goff, who's got another great spot, a higher implied team total at home, and I think he's got a great shot to smash this week.
All right, good stuff. And, on Facebook, someone just mentioned Phillip Rivers. I do think he's a good play as well. I just think that his upside could be limited a little bit because Miami is just so bad that I think that they can run the ball with Eckler and take those TDs away from Rivers. And Rivers, of course, doesn't run the ball at all, so you don't got that floor with Rivers. But I do think the upside is a bit limited with Rivers, but he is still a good play. You can stack him with Keenan Allen and, of course, have a good game with that as well. So Rivers is in play. He's just not quite as good in play as I think of some of these other guys that we're mentioning. All right, let's move to our values. And Gerson, we'll go to you first because the value you had there is almost sick call level. The way you have this guy, I didn't expect to see him on your list there for value. So talk about your guy.
We're talking about Case Keenum.
Yes, Case Keenum.
Yeah, Case Keenum, man. Like 4,900 ownership's going to be 5%. Projected 16.6 points is not sexy, but I think his in this game it can be higher. Dude. DVOA 31st overall ranked defense. I mean, we saw the New York Giants make Jameis Winston actually look like that quarterback that we were hoping, the breakout quarterback. The over-under is at 49. I like that. So I have notes here. It's called number 1, Giants defense. Just kidding. Giants defense this is what they've allowed so far. Completion percentage 67.7. Yards per average. Yards per attempt 10.48. And it equals out to 346 yards per game. Touchdown 2.67. I mean, that like, you know, that's pretty bad. That's like Miami bad. If you haven't figured it out yet, that Giants defense is as bad as the Miami Dolphins defense. If I'm correct, Giants defense is ranked 31st and Dolphins 32nd.
32nd,
right?
yeah.
True.
I mean, they're just right there. And the best part about Case Keenum is that his weapons are cheap too. There's guys like I actually changed my sit call, by the way, guys. So
Yeah, you did.
4,900 wide receivers like McLaurin, or as we call him, McLovin, Paul Richardson, Trey Quinn. These 3 guys are cheap, and Jordan Reed's supposed to be back this week, right?
They say he might be back. He's still a possibility. They haven't said for sure yet.
So if he comes back, that's only going to make that offense move a lot more. And I think
he's been ruled out. He's been ruled out.
He ruled out? Oh, I thought I saw the blurb thing. Okay, but anyway, I mean, Case Keenum, and it's going to be a high-paced game. Both these teams that play at a higher pace. Either you would think that Washington's bad, right? Like they play at a slower pace. But they've actually pushed the pace this year. But everybody was bashing on him, right? Like Monday Night Football. Yeah. I mean, first 2 quarters, everybody like, oh man, get him out of there, put Dwayne Haskins in. And then in the second half, he actually had a really good game. I love Case Keenum. I'm gonna try to get him in my GPP roster. But this is GPP. Don't play him in cash game. Don't be an idiot.
Agreed. Yeah, I think Case Keenum, if he can just put together 2 halves. I mean, the first 2 games of the season, he was good in the first half, terrible in the second half. This last game, he was terrible in the first half, good in the second half. He can just put 2 halves together and create a complete game. They might actually win a game for once. So I like that call. I didn't expect to see it on there, but I do like that call a lot. All right, Tim, let's go to you. Who do you got for your value quarterbacks?
Yeah, I like Case Keenum a lot as well. I had him on my list, but I'm going to mention the guy on the other side, and that's going to be Daniel Jones, a.k.a. Danny Dimes. Number 1, or I guess number 2 behind Russell Wilson last week. I think he was a number 1 value. I could be wrong on that. But he's at home this week. He's facing the Redskins, another terrible pass defense. As Gerson mentioned, the Giants are 31st against the pass DVOA. Well, the Redskins are 27th. So they're not too much better. I like home quarterbacks that are projected favorites. So I like him a lot. And most importantly to me is that he actually showed some rushing upside last week, with the 2 rushing touchdowns. So when they get in, tight there, obviously they're going to be without Saquon Barkley. We'll get to that later. But if they're going to get down in the, close to the end zone, and he's got the opportunity to run the ball in, that obviously increases his floor. So I know he's going to be very popular. Some are projecting him as the number 1 quarterback in cash in terms of ownership, and I can certainly see why.
All right, yeah, good stuff. So the only one that I had that we haven't talked about yet is the same guy we had last week, and that's Mr. Kyle Allen. Going to Houston's defense is not what it used to be, especially that secondary. They're ranked 18th overall in DVOA. Not only that, but they're also ranked towards the bottom of the league. I think 24th and 21st in DVOA versus the number 1 receiver and number 2 receiver. Of course, they've got Curtis Samuels and DJ Moore, which are kind of like a number 1 and a number 1A. So he likes going to those guys. So I think that DVOA opens up some short passes for those guys because they're the sort of the underneath receivers that take it to the distance. So I think that those 2 guys can have big games. Stacked him with Kyle Allen, and I mean, he's only 5,200 on FanDuel. I mean on DraftKings now, so that's a pretty good price for him as well. He's a little bit cheaper, a little bit more than he was last week when he was 4,000. But I think at 5,200, he's still a good play for me.
Yep, I like that call. I think a lot of people are probably not going to play him either. and it's because there's a lot of good quarterbacks this week, I think. How do you guys feel about Matthew Stafford this week? Because I was on him and I kind of liked him a lot. Because obviously, I feel like every single week that Patrick Mahomes goes out and plays, whoever's playing the opposite side of him always does good.
Yeah, looking at the list here, I think me and Tim both had him on our list. We just never did get a chance to talk to him. So Tim, go ahead and talk about Stafford a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy that I usually like playing, home in the Dome. But as Gerson just mentioned, I mean, anytime you're playing against Kansas City, you're probably going to be behind. You're going to have to be throwing to catch up. They are a team that's really weak to the run, so I expect, Carrion to be involved as well. But I think this sets up as a good spot against Stafford. There's nobody really in that secondary that scares me. I think that Kenny Golladay, as we'll mention later, I think he could have a good day. And Stafford, like I said, he usually plays much better at home. He did pop up on the injury report with a hip issue, but all indications are that he's going to play. So I wouldn't be concerned about that really at all.
Yeah, I mean, he played last year with a broken back. I think he can play through a hip issue.
Right.
I didn't even know he had a broken back. I was like,
yeah. No one found out until after the season, which is pretty crazy. Damian Porter on Facebook wants to know your quick thoughts on Jameis Winston. I'll give you mine real quick, and then I'll go to you, Gerson. But the Rams are a tough secondary. I mean, I think it's the Patriots and the Rams are the two teams in the league right now that have not given up a passing touchdown all season. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a tough spot for him. I don't know if I'm paying that price for him or not. But Gerson, what do you think of Jameis Winston?
It's a no for me, dog.
Keep it simple. All right.
I already wasn't really in on Jameis Winston, and then I saw that one of his tackles is questionable and very well could be out. So that's just even more, proof that they're going to be just all over him. Aaron Donald, I think, is going to be killing through that line. So he's going to be under a lot of pressure. I think part of the reason he played so well last week is because the Giants just have a terrible pass rush, but he's got the opposite, situation against the Rams. They have a great one. So
Agreed.
I don't think he'll have much time. And we've seen it. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when pressured. So
Yep.
I don't think it sets up as a good spot at all for him.
He's on the road. I mean, he's on the road, cross-country trip all the way from Florida to Los Angeles. That's going to be on the team. And then the other thing is the Rams are a stout defense this year. I mean, hopefully they show up in the Super Bowl if they make it. But but overall, I'm good on Jameis. There's no reason. I mean, I understand people are like, oh, this could be a sneaky game, But yeah.
Oh, Gerson's getting a phone call again.
That phone again.
That's the second time.
Stop calling me.
Damian Porter again calling and say, dude. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the tight end position now. And Tim, I'll go to you first. Give us your top tight ends.
All right, I'm never going to tell you not to play. You mentioned his target percentage, his red zone percentage is a little bit down this year. So my top tight end this week is actually Evan Ingram. Again, I think this sets up where we're going to attack that Washington secondary. I know, he's a tight end, but he's basically a wide receiver for that team. And we already mentioned this is one of our favorite games on the slate. So we're looking, if you're going to pair Daniel Jones with somebody, the first guy that I'm going to look to is going to be Evan Ingram.
All right, yeah, I like Ingram as well. He's on my list as well. And the other guy I got on my list, I know Gerson wants to talk about him. He has that sound drop he hits us with every weekend. You got that sound drop queued up there?
Shot caller, 20th play on the Impala.
Every week, baby. Every week I'm going to play that. Yeah. Are you
He absolutely smashed last week, man. That was
definitely
a great call.
He broke records last week. He's like one of 13 tight ends to ever have 13 catches and 130 yards or something crazy like that.
He's not a tight end. He's a wide receiver. People just need to pick up on that. I mean, 14 targets for 13 receptions, 134 yards. That's pretty incredible. I mean, obviously the Raiders are not going to win this year, and they're going to have to pass the ball. I mean, it's just Darren Waller. I mean, I hyped him up during the preseason. I hyped him up since week 1, and I'm going to hype him up until his price gets up to like 6,000. I think Darren Waller is this year's George Kittle, and I said it before the season started. If there's a George Kittle out there, it's Darren Waller, and he's proven it. I mean, obviously the guy had a dark past, but overall, I mean, besides Tyrell Williams, who else do they have?
That's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I love him. If you're on him, Geoff, I'm even more happy because the more people, his ownership's not even going to be that crazy because of Evan Ingram and the other guy we're going to mention in a second. But Darren Waller, I mean, in a GPP, definitely going to have a lot of him. because you're going to be running it back with some. Well, actually, I probably won't be running back with Jacoby Brissett in my GPP rosters. But overall, Waller is 5,200. I mean, he's been underpriced still. I still think he's underpriced.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, Evan Ingram had similar. I believe Waller is the number one highest tight end in target shares right now. If I could be wrong, it could be what's his name, Mark Andrews, but I'm not sure. I have to double check on that. But I know Waller is up there. And what do we look for tight end? Volume, target shares, and red zone. He hasn't gone to touchdown yet. I mean, did he get one last week? He didn't, right?
No, he hasn't had one yet.
So if you get that complete game, he's gonna smash. And Derek Carr, he doesn't throw the ball downfield. He throws it short route. And well, first of all, he's the most overpaid quarterback in the history of the Raiders. No, actually, DeMarcus Russell was. He's still getting paid to this day, I bet. But I love Waller. I'm all over him.
All right, good stuff. Y'all took both of mine. I had Ingram and Waller on my top list. So let's move on to the mid tiers. Tim, who you got for your mid tiers?
Well, I actually didn't have anybody listed for my mid tier. I think this is a week you're either going to pay up or pay down. If there's one guy that I do want to mention, it's going to be Greg Olsen. Obviously, another guy that smashed last week. We all had him as a value, but 25 points was just excellent for him. He obviously was the beneficiary of 2 touchdowns. But I'm gonna look at him again. I mean, we always mention when rookie or young quarterbacks in this case, they're going to want to check down to their tight ends. They're going to look for him in the red zone. We saw that he was the first read on a couple different plays. So I definitely think you can go right back to him at 4,200. Houston, traditionally has not been great at covering the tight end. He may have that old man speed, but he finds a way to get open, and that's the most important thing.
Yep, good call on that. I like that. I like that a lot. I actually hadn't even considered looking at him, so that's a good call, especially with my Kyle Allen. That I like him this week as my value. So my mid tier that I want to talk about is Austin Hooper. I know earlier Gerson kind of mentioned him when he talked about Matt Ryan. Hooper's been showing up lately. He's been playing really well, and that Titans defense is actually ranked 20th DVOA versus the tight end. So Hooper is going to slide under the radar a little bit. He's that tight end that no one ever talks about that just comes out and puts up consistent numbers. I think last week he had. Did he have 2 touchdowns last week or just 1 touchdown? I can't remember what he had, but I know he had a really good game.
He had 2.
He had 2 TDs last week, and I think the first 2 weeks he had like 60 or 80 yards. Trying to pull him up right now.
First week he had 77. The second week he had 6 targets for 4 receptions, 34 yards. But still, I mean that first week 9 for 9. That's pretty good. Yeah. Last week 2 touchdowns.
Yep. So I love me some Austin Hooper this week as an under the radar kind of guy in that mid tier as well. Gerson, who you got for your mid tier?
If there is one call on this whole slate, and I'm going to say this clearly, that you're going to regret this week and playing him, it's Will Disley. Because, it's Will Disley. You probably didn't even know who he was until, he got those 2 touchdowns last week. Was it 2 touchdowns? How many touchdowns did he get? I don't know.
He had 2. He had 1 last week, 2 the week before. Yep.
Yeah, he got. So he's a touchdown guy. And the best part is in the red zone. He's excellent in the red zone for Russell Wilson. 3,600. His ownership is going to be probably number 1 or number 2 highest owned. Right now they have him at 22.5% ownership. That's pretty high for a tight end. Here's what I don't like though. My projections have him only 10.5 points. I look for my tight ends usually to get a 20-point projection. If I'm going to have them a lot. So I like Darren Waller and those other guys better. Obviously, they're higher price, but I'm willing to pay for them. 32nd ranked overall in DVOA. That's where everybody's like, oh my gosh, I got to play him, They're freaking drooling their mouths and everything. But that's why. Arizona has been horrible in the first, first 3 weeks now. One of the most interesting facts that I saw on Twitter, shout out to Scott Barrett, works for Pro Football Focus. Will Disley has played in 5 full games with no injuries, of course, throughout his game career. In the 5 games that he played a full game, obviously, 3 for 105 and a touchdown, 3 for 42 and a touchdown, 1 for 4, 0 touchdown, 5 for 50 and 2 touchdowns, 6 for 62 and 1 touchdown. That's pretty sexy.
It's pretty, you can't beat that for sure, definitely.
But here's we know what they've done. They allowed Mark Andrews, T.J. Hawkinson, Greg Olsen all to have top 3 performances in tight end. But here's where it gets interesting: 76.7% completion rate percentage. That's the 9th highest. 11.60 yards per target, most in the NFL. A touchdown every 6 targets, most in the NFL. All that equals out to an amount of a ridiculous of 2.93 PPR point per target. So if Disley gets the volume, a little bit higher volume, because I don't like his volume. I mean, it's not high for a tight end of what I like. But if he gets volume in this game, in a high-paced game, he's gonna smash.
Yep.
But would I be shocked if he goes out and gets 3 targets and well, he's not gonna get 3 targets, 5 targets and like 3 receptions for 25 yards and no touchdown? No, I'm not gonna be shocked. But this is gonna be my call this week. This is just my opinion. He could be the biggest bust.
He could be. Yeah, you're right. And I
thought you were saving that for a certain running back there, Gerson.
Yeah, I had some stats on him too. I actually had him as my value, and I'll just kind of give you my stats that I had on him. So listen to these stat lines. 6 receptions on 9 targets for 131 and a touchdown. 8 receptions on 9 targets for 112 and a touchdown. And then 6 receptions on 7 targets, 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those stat lines are the stat lines that are put up against the Cardinals defense these first 3 weeks. T.J. Hawkinson, like you mentioned, Mark Andrews, and Greg Olsen. Those are some stat lines that are pretty sexy. Greg Olsen, he's not a young buck. He's pretty old. So the fact that he put up 2 touchdowns against them, Will Disley is definitely. I think he'll be the chalk play in a lot of lineups this week with that price tag that he's at. So love me some Will Disley. Let's go over to you, Tim. You got some value tight ends you want to talk about?
Well, there's only one guy, and I do want to add one more note to Disley, not that you need another reason to play him this week, is obviously the Seahawks traded away Nick Van Nett, their other tight end.
Good call.
Who is also playing about 30 to 40% of snaps. So, I mean, I don't expect his snap share to go up too much, but he just has no competition now. So I expect him, every route that they have called for a tight end will be run for Will Disley. The only other guy I want to mention, and, he's not somebody I'm going to have a lot of exposure to, but I kind of like Trey Burton. One of the ways that you've been able to target against this Minnesota team has been against the tight end. Obviously, I think that's where Darren Waller blew up against last week. I'm not saying he's Darren Waller by any means, but at least not getting the target share Darren Waller is. But Mitch Trubisky, if he's going to be able to move the ball against the Vikings, I think he's going to look for a lot of short passes, and I think that he's probably going to be looking for Trey Burton. He is, I think, 3,800 on DraftKings. So he's mainly used I think we all agree will be chalk.
Holy shit, Trey Burton! I haven't heard about that guy.
Yeah, actually, I was looking at Trey Burton too, and actually, I didn't have the balls to put it on my list there, Tim. I appreciate that you brought him up because, that Minnesota Viking defense, I think I brought it up in week 1 with Austin Hooper, as their defense is not good against the tight end, and Austin Hooper had a big game. 9 receptions on 9 targets, 77 yards is pretty good for a tight end. And Burton, no one's talking about him. He did have a full practice this week. He's ready to roll, so good call on that. All right, let me pull up my other. I had one more I thought here. Hold on. Sorry about this. This is great radio right now. Can't find my tight ends. Oh yeah, I had one more guy I wanted to mention, and that's I mentioned him last week. He had a little bit of a good game, not too bad. He dropped a touchdown pass, but O.J. Howard once again. I think that with Chris Godwin being limited, I think he will play, but he will be limited. Mike Evans being their deep threat, I think O.J. Howard over the middle of the field is going to be that guy that he dumps off a lot of stuff to, especially with him being under pressure. So O.J. Howard is kind of going to be an under-the-radar play at 3,900. I think that he can have a good PPR. I think he's more of a PPR DraftKings play than he is FanDuel. So O.J. Howard is the other guy that we hadn't mentioned yet. All right, is there anybody else that we haven't mentioned, guys, before we take a break?
Yeah, I do want to give a shout-out to Damian Porter in the chat. He mentioned T.J. Hawkinson. This one obviously hurts as well because after that blow-up in the first week, he's kind of let us down 2 weeks in a row. Last week, 1 catch on 4 targets. The week before, 1 catch on 3 targets. He's down to 3,300, so he is very tempting. He's cheaper than any of the other 2 guys we've mentioned before. We said that we like Stafford, so obviously he's going to have to throw the ball to somebody. but it would not shock me at all if he had another 3-target, 1, 2, 3 catch game. So it's hard for me when we're to target him when we're talking about those other guys. I think they're going to target KC more down the field, but I don't hate the Hawkinson. If you want to do some Stafford stacks, I think you could definitely include him in those.
I think we have to mention Travis Kelce, obviously. Travis Kelce, shout out to him. Obviously, he was the best tight end in the NFL. Actually, no, Darren Waller was the best tight end in the NFL. But then we also have to mention Mark Andrews. He was limited last week. And this is why it's so damn important to follow Twitter on Sunday. I'm telling you guys gotta be on Twitter on Sunday because shout out to, I believe, Tim or Jason, one of the two, mentioned it in our chat row. And we have a chat row on the DFS Roundtable. You're more than welcome to join for free. We talk about football on Sunday morning, and someone mentioned it, and it said Mark Andrews didn't look limited in the route that he ran during the pregame. Yeah. And I lowered my exposure way down after that.
Yep.
I went from him. I'm glad I did because I went from him to Darren Waller. So, I mean, that's very important Sunday news. But Kelce, you have to mention him, especially with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, speaking of Twitter, guys, if you're not following my Twitter handle, Geoff Lambert 77, if you go to my Twitter handle, click on the little gear icon and click on my lists. I have a list of all the verified beat reporters for every NFL team. And literally on Sundays, I'll pull that list up and just keep hitting refresh. Because they'll put things on Twitter that they don't put anywhere else. Because it's sort of that right in the moment, like in like this whole thing with Mark Andrews. They tweeted out that he looked limited in the pregame, and that didn't come out anywhere else other than on Twitter. So I think you definitely need to get on Twitter. I use that a lot for preseason football as well. So that's a big thing. So if you haven't subscribed to my list already, I would suggest going ahead and doing that. So. All right, we've talked about the tight ends long enough here. Let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we will talk about the running backs and the receivers. So hold tight, guys.
In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
All right, guys, welcome back, and I'm here as always with Gerson and Tim, and we are about to break down the running backs, the receivers, and the defenses for this weekend slate. Gerson, we'll go to you first this time for the running backs. Who is your top tier running backs this week?
So my top tier running back is not Christian McCaffrey. It's actually Austin Eckler. He's my top running back this week. We had breaking news today that Justin Jackson got hurt, and we had breaking news the other day that Melvin Gordon's returning. They did say that Melvin Gordon is going to get limited share. I expect him to get like 8 carries, maybe like total of 10 touches. You guys got to remember, this is the Miami Dolphins are playing. You don't need fucking Melvin Gordon in there for like, I don't know, more than. I wouldn't even put it. I put him like 5 touches at the most,
It's basically Melvin Gordon's preseason right now is the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Preseason Miami Dolphins game. But yeah, I mean, he's 8,000. I expect him to have the highest ownership this week. His ownership actually changed, I believe. I had him at 28% ownership, but 8,000 projected for almost 26 points. 26 points, guys. I'm telling you guys. Only running back I think with that kind of high projection to guys like Kamara, CMC, and Saquon Barkley. So it shocked me when I saw that kind of projection. I was like, wow. But then when I saw other things like, they ranked 31st overall versus DVOA running back. They have a 29.5 or over under. 29.5 total, and then a 44 over under. I mean, that most of that. I mean, if you do the math, that's what I mean. Come on, guys. But yeah, running backs have combined an average of 33.7 carried and 3.7 receptions per game against the Dolphins. Tony Pollard, guys. I mean, I respect Tony Pollard. I think he's a good running back. I think he's an excellent season league winner if Ezekiel Elliott goes down. But he had 103 yards and a touchdown on 13 carries. He almost I think he did. Didn't he, Tim? Did he outscore Zeke?
He did because he got the touchdown, yeah.
Okay, so he outscored Zeke on point. I was actually looking at Justin Jackson when maybe I can play him a little bit, be contrarian, But then when they announced he was out, I'm not playing I hope you don't play it. That's not playing. But the Dolphins have allowed the most rush attempt at 115, rushing touchdown at 6, and rushing yards at 624. While the next worst team has allowed 506 yards. So if you do the math, almost 120 yard difference.
Wow.
Actually, I think my math is off on that one, but yeah, you get the point. But I mean, obviously, Austin Eckler is one of my lock of the weeks, and I rarely say this, but I think this game is gonna have 2 locks of the week.
Yep, and we'll get to him in the next one.
But yeah, my top guy is Austin Eckler this week.
All right, good stuff. Tim, I'll go to you. Who's your other top guy? I know you had Eckler as well.
I do. I agree with him. I mean, whenever you're telling a guy, hey, this is going to be the last week where you're the main guy, I feel like they're going to feed him the ball. So I love Eckler this week. I'm not going to tell you not to play Christian McCaffrey. I think he's a good play too. I mentioned this a little bit to you guys in the pre-show, is that I don't love running back. I said the first 3 weeks of this season, I said it all last season, I usually try and fit in 3 running backs every week. But as of right now, I actually have 2 running backs and 4 wide receivers in my cash lineup because I'm not loving running back this week. I think Christian McCaffrey's in a good spot, but Houston's strong against running back, and they're one of the strongest teams against the pass-catching running backs. So if you're not going to play him, there's really nobody else at the top tier that I'm really looking at.
Oh, God. What wide receivers?
And I did have one guy. I kind of included him in the top tier. He's probably more of a mid-tier guy right now. He's at 6,800. And that's David Johnson. And I included him because he is obviously a pass-catching running back, and the Seahawks are 26th versus the pass-catching running backs this year. So I think that David Johnson can catch a lot of passes out of the backfield and make it viable. I think he's, again, more of a DraftKings play than he is a FanDuel play because of the PPR nature of it. So David Johnson, I think, would be a good stack with my Kyler Murray call from the quarterbacks. I think that he'll get plenty of passes, could break one for a touchdown easy because we know he's got that ability. So David Johnson might fly under the radar with guys like Eckler and CMC getting all the pub. I think Johnson could be a good pivot off those 2 guys. All right, let's move to the mid-tier, and we'll go to you this time first, Tim. Who is your mid-tier running backs?
Well, the first guy on my list is going to be Mark Ingram. Obviously, he was another one of the top performers last week. But we know that Baltimore is going to continue to lean on this run game, so I think he sets up as a good spot here as well. I know I said earlier to play Lamar, but I like Mark Ingram for the same reasons. I think Cleveland is easy to get to on the ground. He's obviously getting all of the volume. So, if I'm going to play somebody in that mid-tier, I like your David Johnson call, but I also really like Mark Ingram. Yeah,
I like Ingram as well. I think coming off that big game too, he could definitely have some good some usage there in that offense. So good call. Gerson, what about you? What you got for your mid-tier running back?
I just want to add to the Mark Ingram call. I actually love that call. I didn't list him on my running back list because Tim had him, but obviously a great call because 1, I always look for volume in running back. 2, they're favored by 7 points. At home, 3, they're at home. So those are the big 3 things that I always look for in running back. And just saying it right now, pick up Justice Hill because Mark Ingram sooner or later is going to lose that job. And knock on wood, hopefully he's going to lose it this week. But love Mark Ingram. Next guy I want to talk about is Marlon Mack.
Yep.
Marlon Mack, this guy, I feel like he's one of the most underrated running backs in the league. Doesn't get a lot of love, but he's a great runner. If you watch him play, he runs with he kind of remind me a little bit of Adrian Peterson, the way he runs. Obviously, AP was on another level when he was in prime. But 6,100 percentage ownership supposed to be 17.1. Projection point is 19 point. 14th overall in DVOA, but here's where it gets interesting, right? The Oakland Raiders are ranked 14th overall. But everybody's going to be looking on DraftKings. They're going to look at, oh, wow, they have that red mark. They're 10th overall. That's a tough matchup. I think I always tell people, if you look at DraftKings for news, for ranking, for anything on there on the player scene,
doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. It's their job to try to provide you with some guidance, but their guidance sucks. Facing the Oakland Raiders, like I just said, I like home running back favored by 6 or more points. Over under is their biggest implied total 25.5, but Viking running backs, they ran all over the Oakland Raiders. While everybody thought they had a pretty stout defense to run, I even said it. I said they looked pretty good on the run, but I also did say that it didn't. I know it wasn't good. It wasn't going to stand. But 196 yards, and 2 touchdowns to Alexander Madison and Dalvin Cook. This is basically the Colts' offensive line is the best in the NFL. I'm going to say it right now. I think they're the best in the NFL. Too bad Andrew Luck retired when they had the best offensive line.
Yeah, finally got an offensive line and he retires.
Hey, you know what? You guys killed me for like 8 years. I don't know how many years you've been pro, but now that you guys provided offensive line, just give it to Jacoby Brissett, please. But, last year, Marlon Mack played the Oakland Raiders. And in that game, he had 132 yards. He averaged 5.3, not 2 points, sorry guys, 5.3 yards per attempt and 2 touchdowns. So I see this kind of upside in this game too. And I'm going to be all over Marlon Mack. He's probably going to be one of my highest owned running back. But it's a great matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I like Mack as well. He's on my list, so he gets that volume in that offense. And you're right, great offensive line will make you a good running back no matter what. All right, so the guy I'm going to talk about here. So if I asked you to, I'm going to give you all a quick quiz. Who is the 32nd, worst team DVOA against the run right now? If you had to guess, just guess somebody.
Miami.
That's what I thought. It's not. They're 31st. The Kansas City Chiefs are 32nd. So I'm playing Carrion Johnson for that reason. Carrion Johnson, I think, last week had 20 carries. The running backs that are there, Ty Johnson, and then the fullback whose name I can't remember, they each had 1 touch each. So Johnson's getting the full workload. He got all the work in the passing game. It wasn't much work in the passing game, but he did get all of it. So I think Carrion Johnson versus the 32nd team against the DVOA and against the run is a great play. Of course, that total, what's that total, Gerson? 55.5 is what you said earlier?
Yeah, 55, yeah.
Yeah, so Carrion Johnson, I think, will be that guy that sort of breaks out this week. I know he's been struggling. He'll go a little bit lower owned because he hasn't been really good this year. But the volume is there, and obviously the matchup is there. And I think that they're going to have a breakout game here for Carrion Johnson. So he's my under-the-radar kind of play in the mid-tier.
Can I add to that?
Yep.
Okay. On 18 first touches against the Chiefs last year, there were 10 running backs who hit finished top 24 options, including 5 top 12 options. And the only one that didn't hit at least 16-point PPR point was I don't know, what would they call him? The muscle hamster or something? Doug Martin.
Doug Martin.
But it's just interesting because you wouldn't. I didn't even. I said it on the show. I'm like, what? 32nd overall, Chief? And I don't even know why I didn't remember it. But he did. I tell people this. Volume means everything, right? He got 75% of the workload. And the Chiefs right now have allowed the lead worth 6.20 yards per carry. That's huge. I love that call. I'm going to be all over it. Great call, Jeff.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Damian Pointer, once again, he's got a question for us. Fournette going up against his Broncos. What are your thoughts on Fournette, Tim?
Man, obviously, I can see the play. I know he's been popping up in some projections. But after that game last week, man, he's going to have to show me before he can get it. I know he's getting volume in the passing game, but just some of those runs just look absolutely brutal. One thing I will say for him is that I think that they have a good he's in a setup as a good spot here in terms of, like I said, he's really kind of game script proof at this point. They're going to keep him in there. But I think he's priced too high for me to play him. As he mentioned, he's only 100 less than Marlon Mack, who I like better. A couple $100 less some of the other guys that we've mentioned, and then he's more than Carrion Johnson, which I think probably has a better point per dollar projection here. But I actually want to ask Gerson a question because one of the guys that was popping up for me, we mentioned Kansas City is 32nd DVOA against the run. Miami's 31st. 30th is the Indianapolis Colts. So do you have any interest in your boy Josh Jacobs?
My brother actually asked me this question too. And you guys don't know who Jason is. He's the other guy who looks like me.
Exactly like him.
Yeah, kind of, guys. But yeah, I don't mind him. I think people are gonna be off him. I think he's gonna be contrarian. And the other thing is, within the last 2 weeks, he's been sick. He lost 10 pounds, but he said that he's feeling good now, that he's okay. And in the NFL, they have some magical, I don't want to call them steroid shot, but some magical IV that makes you feel better fast. I can see this, but here's where my worry. And maybe we should be more aware, but he's not a PPR running back. He doesn't really get a lot of reception. But if the Colts are ahead, they're going to go to DeAndre Washington or Jalen Richard. But one good news on that is that John Gruden actually said that he wants to involve Jacob as a pass-catching running back. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe anything that comes out of John Gruden's mouth besides the fact that, this guy was like, yeah, Antonio Brown, yeah, he's a great player, good guy. We want him on our team.
Yeah,
yeah, we're going to cut him tomorrow morning.
Good point. The crazy thing to me is coming out of college, like Josh Jacobs was touted as the pass-catching type running back, the every down back, and they're just not using him that way. I don't know what the deal is there. If he's just not learning the offense, maybe, or maybe he's not good at pass pro. But coming out of college, that was his biggest thing, was that he was a pass catching running back, and that was going to be his sort of calling card, and that just hasn't been so far in the NFL. So, little worried about him in that sense. All right, so that's it for the mid tiers, right? We have any more mid tiers you want to talk about, Gerson?
I think we covered most of them. I do. Oh my God, I don't know. Chris Carson, I guess. I say this because we all got burned by him last week.
Cool.
I did 150 rosters last week, and I clicked on 20 of the rosters just to see. Oh, that's a good roster. Fucking Chris Carson. Oh, that's a good roster.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fucking Chris Carson. Over and over and over. I was like, oh my goodness. What's his name? The head coach, the one that got hit in the nose, broke his.
Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll, yeah. He said that he believes in Chris Carson. He believes that he had bad luck fumbling the ball. I don't know how you have bad luck fumbling the ball, but I played football enough that if someone knocks the ball out of me, you fumble the ball. That's it. There isn't if, ands, or but about that. But Pete Carroll's you know what? They punched that ball pretty good, so it's not his fault. I'm like, it is his fault, dude. Rashad Penny's back. He's healthy, so that does worry me a lot. But that price, $5,700 against the Cardinals.
It's tempting.
26.5 Vegas implied total is interesting. And last year he had 122 yards, 6.4 yards per carry, and a touchdown versus them. The Cardinals just allowed Christian McCaffrey to run all over them for 153 yards and a touchdown. It's just, you have to have balls to go back to them. But again, we've been saying it. Recency bias.
Yep.
That's hard to say in slow motion. But recency bias. We talked about it last week when we said Mike Evans, recency bias. Who was another guy we were saying recency bias last week?
Phillip Lindsey.
Other guy, Alvin Kamara.
Yep.
Remember what I said last week? I said, Alvin Kamara, guys, everybody's going to be off him. And if he has a 35, 40-point game, don't be shocked he's going to be in the top roster. What do you know? Alvin Kamara went for a big-ass game, right? Recency bias. This is one edge that you can take over. Now, I'm not telling you to go play him. I'm suggesting, have him in some of your rosters in GPP.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's go over to the values. We're, of course, running long as usual. So, Tim, give me your value running backs.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to start because I think Gerson wants to talk, take his on Wayne Gallman. I know you want to talk about Chris Thompson. So I'm going to talk about James White. I like James White a lot this week. Obviously, he was out last week for paternity. He's going to be back this week. And I think that he's going to be – this sets up as a good game for him. Another thing that may help him this week is that Julian Edelman has been limited all week. I think he's probably going to play, but I think that James White could see even more involvement in the passing game this week. He has a great history against the Bills. And so, I mean, there aren't a whole lot of running backs that I think are in play down in this range. But you're talking about a guy who can get, 5-6 targets every week. And, he's 4,900. And some of these guys go on this Patriots team. Obviously, they have the second, I think, highest projected team total on the slate, or one of, certainly one of them. But no, I'm taking it back. They're down at 25. But either way, I think this sets up as a good game for James White. So especially if Edelman doesn't play. If Edelman is out, I think that they'll get a lot more dump-off passes and short passes to James White, which obviously sets up great on PPR scoring.
All right, good stuff. Gerson, who you got for your value?
Not Wayne Gallman. Okay, so I want to talk about this real quick because a lot of people have asked me what I think about Wayne Gallman. I expect Wayne Gallman. It's funny because once I usually do my research starting Wednesday. On Wednesday, he was 36% ownership, right? He has dropped from 36 to 22% now. So it's giving you a feeling that a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know about him, And I was baffled that DraftKings listed him at 4,600. At 4,600, you know what running backs you can get? You can get Devontae Freeman at 5,000. You can get guys like Chris Thompson, who I like, that Geoff is going to mention. Phillip Lindsey. I like Phillip Lindsey over him. I was going to say Justin Jackson, but he decided to be a vagina and be out for like 3 weeks. In the call that Tim just made, James White at 4,900. I'd rather have those three running backs that are starting running back and are proven. Wayne Gallman, to me, it's a tough. I'm not fading him. I have to have him in my GPP roster because I'm going to have a Daniel Jones, But, you can play him. Not my cup of tea, but that's the value I think everybody's going to be on. But that's my opinion. To give you an idea of what I have him projected for, it's 12.5 points. That is not GPP winning, Nope. That's not even cash game winning for me. For 4.6 K, it's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, I'm off Gallman as well. And I actually was suggesting people don't even add him in their season-long leagues unless they're really hurting for running backs there. I think there were some better options in the waiver wire for those. Cause I think Gallman, everyone's like, oh yeah, he'll get the volume. Like, yeah, he got the volume when he was a starter before Saquon Barkley. And how good was he then? So, I mean, yeah. I'm not a fan of Gallman this week at all. But
fun fact. The last time I played Wayne Gallman, I went and visited Tim in Texas. The Cowboys with the Green Bay Packers. And he shouldn't have been.
Yeah, it didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. All right, so I got two guys out.
Note I want to mention on James White.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the Patriots officially placed fullback James Devlin on IR. Obviously, we saw that Sony Michel was struggling, without his fullback. I think he had the lowest snap count he's had of the year. He just doesn't look right. So I think that they're going to try and involve James White even more out of the backfield as well as in the passing game.
Yeah, and Burkhead's questionable too. I don't know if that's just like one of those Patriots things where they just list everyone as questionable, but I've heard that he's been missing practices as well.
Right.
He was limited all week.
Yep. All right, so I got
the only guy that's never going to be questionable is Tom Brady.
Yeah. Even if he's put as questionable, he's still playing. He is. I got two guys I want to talk about. Of course, we mentioned Chris Thompson already. I like Chris Thompson a little bit more when McLaurin was going to be ruled out. Now I think he will play. I do think Chris Thompson's still in play, obviously. I think Adrian Peterson has not been very good. Chris Thompson got some carries last week as well. Of course, he's involved in the passing game. I think Chris Thompson is a great PPR DraftKings play. I think he gets, 8 to 10 targets this week, and I think he can maybe even score a touchdown. But the other guy I want to talk about that no one's talking about is going to be Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake obviously plays for the Miami Dolphins, and no one wants to talk about him, but he had 12 carries last week and 6 targets. They're going to be trailing this entire game. Drake is the guy that's going to be in there. I think Rosen is looking for him, underneath. I think Rosen wants to get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible. They had Fitzpatrick back there. He's the gunslinger. He's looking down deep. He ignored Drake altogether, but Rosen's looking at those underneath guys, so I think Drake can have a pretty good game here at that price at 4.2K. I think Drake will be very, very low owned and could be a GPP type player for me.
Yeah, very low owned, 3%.
Yeah,
I mean, you have balls, Geoff. You have balls. I mean, the fact that you play anybody on a preseason team is balls.
Yep, definitely. Is there anybody else we haven't talked about, Tim?
No, I think we're good.
I think we're good. Did anybody want to mention, I guess, Darrell Williams? We know Damian Williams has been ruled out, but they still have LaShawn McCoy there. I think Darrell Williams could be another good play, but they raised his price. I'm not sure if I'm on him quite as much as I was when his price is super low, but Darrell Williams is a viable value as well, I think.
I just think that defense of the Lions, run defense is pretty stout.
It's pretty good, yep.
So I think, overall, and LaShawn McCoy is going to play. It looks like he's healthy for the first time. He practiced in full.
Yep, he did.
I think his volume is going to go up. I'm just not too interested in Darrell Williams. But I do want to give a shout-out to Tim for last week, of course, for Phillip Lindsey. And I think Phillip Lindsey could be another good play this week for low ownership again. We don't know. Phillip Lindsey was a stud running back last week.
Yep.
And if he pulls it off again against Jacksonville Jaguars, good call right there again.
The volume's certainly there, man. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
All right, good stuff. Let's go ahead and move to wide receivers now. Gerson, we'll go to you first with your top receivers. And again, we're up against the clock, so let's keep it short.
Keenan Allen, playing Miami Dolphins.
Not quite that short, but I get the point.
As Keenan Allen, like I told everybody, there's two guys that I'm gonna lock in on if I were to ever play a cash game roster. Guys, trust me, I do play cash game every now and then. But Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler are my lock of the week, basically, if you play cash game. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams got declared out today. Obviously, volumes are going to be there, and his volume has been there the last, 3 weeks now. And it's incredible how much this guy is I feel like he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL, and yet he just keeps on doing great. He has a total target of almost 10, 15, 17. I can't do the math exactly, but that's almost 47 targets, I think, probably, something like that. But 183 yards last week against the Houston Texans. What is he going to do against the Dolphins?
Yeah.
And the best part is he's cheap. He's 7,600. I just thought he was going to be an $8,000 wide receiver. But that, lucky now.
Can't beat that. Yeah, I actually put an article out on GoingFor2.com. You should check it out. There's a chart that was posted on Twitter. It's I forget the exact metric, but it takes target share and air yard share into account, and it's a chart that's sort of got plots. So all the receivers in the NFL are sort of plotted, and they're all in this cluster in the middle of the chart. And then all the way up in the top right corner for efficiency rating is Keenan Allen, all by himself, because he's been so good this year that he's just so far and above everybody else that it's been ridiculous. So Keenan Allen, for sure, is a top play this week. Tim, who you got for your top play?
I guess my top play has an asterisk right now. Marlon Humphrey is limited for the Ravens. If he does not play, my top wide receiver play is going to be Odell Beckham. But assuming Humphrey does play, which I do think he will, I'm going right back to the well. I had a lot of them last week. I'll have a lot of them again this week. It's my boy Julio Jones.
Yeah, Julio!
Whenever it's Matt Ryan in the dome, man, I think this guy averages 20 points at home. I think he's one of the top guys. Obviously, Keenan Allen, is tops there. He's the chalk play. He's a great play, and he's $200 cheaper than Julio. But Julio's got 30 targets on the year, man. I think he's going to see another 10-target week at least. You want to target Tennessee in the air. He's most likely to be matched up against Malcolm Butler, who's just fucking terrible. So, man, just go right back to Julio.
Yep, agreed. And I had one guy written down here, but I since changed my mind because I think Chris Godwin's going to play now. But I had Mike Evans down. I thought he'd be a target monster this week with Godwin out, and his price didn't really change much after his huge game last week. I think he's still viable in tournament lineups, but I wouldn't play him in any cash lineups. Mike Evans, of course, at 7.1K is a good play, but with Godwin in the lineup, I don't like him quite as much this week. All right, let's move to the mid-tiers. Gerson, who you got for your mid-tier receivers?
I think it's just going to be Tyler Lockett, man. Hot Pocket. Whatever you call him, lock of the week.
Hot Pocket.
Hot Pocket. I like calling him Hot Pocket, Tyler Hot Pocket. But Tyler Lockett. I mean, this guy is just a sweet, like I don't know how to say it. Like he's like a combination of Antonio Brown and like kind of like Tyreek. Like he gets open and then just boom breaks tackles, and like 6,300. He got 35 points last week.
Yep.
14 targets, guys. Now, is that repeatable? Yes. The week before that, 12 targets. The week before that, obviously they did something. I don't know what the fuck they did against Cincinnati, but 2 targets for 1 reception. and I remember everybody was all over him too. And he got a touchdown, so he got a break right there. But this is Russell Wilson's guy right here. Tyler Lockett. Playing the Cardinals, they're missing safety, they're missing cornerbacks, high-paced game. There's a reason why everybody. I'm telling you, the most popular game this week the most popular team to play is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. I was almost going to call them the Arizona Cardinals. Seattle Seahawks. Love Tyler Lockett.
All right, good stuff. Tim, what you got for your mid-tier receivers?
Yeah, my favorite mid-tier receiver this week is Cooper Kupp, man. We know that he's pretty much Jared Goff's favorite go-to receiver. I already mentioned Goff's one of my favorite quarterback plays this week. And the worst corner for Tampa Bay is their slot corner, MJ Stewart. I think that that's just absolutely the way that they are going to attack here. So, I mean, if I'm paying for a mid-tier receiver, I love the Lockett call. I have great exposure to Lockett, but I'm going to be way overweight on Cooper Kupp this week.
Yep, I love Kupp as well. I had him on my list. One guy that I've got that we haven't talked about yet, I know we talked about Julio, but there's a guy that only got 1 target last week, and everybody's down on him. That's Calvin Ridley, after having, I think, 10 targets and 8 targets in week 1 and 2. So the Tennessee Titans are 31st DVOA versus the slot receiver, which is where Calvin Ridley lines up usually. And I think that he is in for a monster game at 5,000. I think that Ryan is sort of a squeaky wheel narrative where he didn't get much targets last week. Everyone's kind of talking about it. I think Ryan looks for him. And again, like I said, Tennessee's bad against the slot receivers, so Calvin Ridley could be in a smash spot this week. So he's my top mid-tier receiver as well, and he's cash game viable for me. I think I have him in my early cash game lineup.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Calvin Ridley. So the reason why he didn't do very well last week, Calvin Ridley's one of those wide receivers that does terrible against the zone defense. Last week he faced a very heavy zone defense kind of scheme. This week he's going to face a man-to-man defense. Adoree Jackson is one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL. I believe he's bottom 10. I believe Calvin Ridley's going to tear it up, and I love that call, Geoff.
All right, good stuff. Ready to move to the values now, guys?
Yeah.
All right, Gerson, we'll go to you first. Who you got for your value?
I don't really have like a cheap value call. I don't know if you guys noticed that on my list, but they're not really that cheap. But there's some guys that I still like. Sterling Shepard and then Curtis Samuel. I think they're both in great spots. But I don't have a value wide receiver this week, to be honest with you guys. I think I'm going to stick in that mid-tier because I can find value at other positions. But it's one of those weeks that you're going to have to use. You're not going to know what direction you're going to go until Sunday morning.
Yep.
Because if Rec Burkhead news happens like that, like last week, you're going to change everything.
Yep.
But I have no value. I apologize about that. And
no, I consider Samuel a value. He's pretty cheap. He's 4,600 on DraftKings. Yep. I had him as one of my values as well. Like I mentioned before, that the who are they playing? Who's the? I just drew a blank here. Who are the Panthers playing this week? Houston, yeah. So they're bad against number 1 and number 2 receivers. They're good against the 3, the tight end, and the running back, but against the number 1s and number 2s, they're pretty terrible. And I think Samuel and DJ Moore can both be a good stack option with Kyle Allen, so I like that call as well. The only value I wanted to talk about, I had Paul Richardson written down, but that was before we found out that McLaurin might play. I still do like Paul Richardson. I think he's had a touchdown in the last 2 games. I don't like him quite as much as I used to before the news with McLaurin playing. But one guy I wanted to mention, he's a little bit high for a value, but that's Christian Kirk for the Cardinals. He's getting a ton of volume. I think Damian Porter mentioned it in the chat. He's getting a ton of volume. And Damiere Byrd, who was my sick call of the week last week, who didn't come through for me, he actually had the biggest snap share of all the receivers. He had more snaps than Larry Fitzgerald and more snaps than Christian Kirk. And this week he's out, so those snaps will go to Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald as well as those targets. So Christian Kirk is a good value spot for me as well. All right, Tim, who you got for your value?
Yeah, I love McLovin, and I love, assuming he plays, and I love the Christian Kirk call. The only other guy I had written down was DK Metcalf. We mentioned that we love Seattle Seahawks this week. Gerson mentioned they're going to be very popular, but I think that he's going to come in, and Gerson, you can tell me the ownership projections, but I think he's going to come in lower ownership than Tyler Lockett. He's 4,800. He's gotten 6, 7, and 6 targets. He's obviously their downfield threat. So yeah, I really think that if you're looking for a pivot off one of those guys, I really like DK Metcalf.
He has an 8% ownership, but what's interesting about him, he has a 2.26 leverage score. And when I say leverage score, what it means is basically take the ownership projections as well as the value, as well as the point projection for the game. So it's a great pivot for from Tyler Lockett.
All right, good stuff. We got anybody else we want to mention?
Yeah, I'm kind of a glutton for punishment on this one because he burned us. Gerson mentioned earlier, there were 2 guys I had a lot of exposure to last week that burned me. It seemed like every one of my good lineups had one of these 2 guys. It's Chris Carson and then Emmanuel Sanders. I like Manny. He's still getting the volume. He's still one of the top in terms of red zone targets. And I think last week their game plan was to run the ball. We obviously saw last night the Eagles' game plan was to run the ball. So I think going back this week, Denver's going to try and get Manny Sanders involved again. His price is still under $5,000. So if you're looking, like I said, for another one of those cheaper value receivers, I could see going back to Emmanuel Sanders. As we mentioned earlier, love the recency bias. People are going to be off of him. So he makes an interesting play to me.
All right.
I forgot about this guy, and I don't know why I didn't write him down, but just wanted to mention him. I'm not going to really do a breakdown or anything, but Marvin Jones, play him.
Yeah, good call. I like Marvin Jones a lot because I think that they're actually the Kansas City Chiefs are actually good against number 1 receivers. It's the number 2 they struggle against, and I think Jones is the number 2 there. So I think he can have a big game. So good call. All right, let's go through defenses really quick. We'll each have one defense. So pick whoever your favorite defense is, and we'll just talk about that one defense so we can get this moving here. Gerson, we'll go to you first. Who is your one defense this week?
My only defense, Chargers defense. Preseason game, guys. Preseason game.
Yep, agreed. Playing Miami, they're probably going to be the chalk. So, yeah, I agree. I think Chargers are a good defense. Tim, what you got for your one defense?
So it's going to be the Rams. I already mentioned that Jameis is terrible against pressure, especially if his tackle is out. I think they have one of the highest sack potentials on the slate. Sacks turn into turnovers turn into points. So if you're not going to be playing the Chargers, which I definitely think you should, play some Rams.
All right, and I'm going to go with my cheap, it's almost borderline sick call defense. I think they're, 2,100 on DraftKings, I believe. And that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have actually been pretty decent against a decent defense this year. I know the Rams are a good offense, and they are going home, but I think at 2.1K, I can get some decent points from the Bucs defense this week. So I'm going to play them in some of my GPP high risk rosters. So that's the one defense I'm going to pick out of those guys. I think I am playing a lot of Patriots, a lot of Chargers. I'll have some of that Rams defense as well, but I think Bucs are going to be sort of sneaky. All right, guys, let's jump into our next segment. Let's do our stacks.
And now, the stacks of the week.
All right, Tim, we got our brand new stack drop. It's a lot shorter than our last one. We'll go to you first with your stack of the week. Who you got?
I'm going with my boy Julio Jones. So it's going to be Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. And if you're going to run it back, my favorite play on the Titans is Derrick Henry.
Nice. I like that stack a lot. All right, Gerson, what is your stack of the week?
First off, I want to apologize about last week's stack of the week. Second, Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett, and Larry Fitzgerald. I feel like this game is just going to go off. I'm going to be all over that stack.
All right, good stuff. I'm actually going to give 2 stacks of the week for myself. I know I'm the host here, so I can do that. The one I got is going to be the opposite of what Gerson had, the opposite side of the game. It's going to be Kyler Murray, David Johnson, and then bring it back with Tyler Lockett. I think that's going to be a pretty contrarian stack. I think everyone's going to stack Seattle, so I'm going to stack the other side. And then I also like the Daniel Jones, Evan Ingram with Paul Richardson coming back on the other side. I think there's going to be a sneaky high-scoring game. I think we've seen it in the past where you get 2 bad teams together. All of a sudden, they put up a ton of points because they can't stop one another. So that could be a high-scoring game there. So I'm going to do that Daniel Jones, Evan Ingram, and Richardson stack as well. So those are my 2 stacks of the week. All right, let's do it. You ready for the sick call of the week?
And now, the sick call of the week.
All right, Gerson, we'll go to you first. Since you are actually sick this week, you can give us your true sick call of the week. I know, and it's pretty sick, so go ahead.
Now, I've seen it in the chat. People have been talking about it.
I guarantee no one's talking about my guy. Guarantee it.
Yeah, I guarantee that, bitch. Dontrell Inman. We got the breaking news that Mike Williams is out indefinitely. I think Dontrell Inman will step in. And if you look at this guy's workload within the last, I don't know, I feel like he's been there like 3 years now. This guy playing Miami Dolphins, preseason game, guys, again. But when he actually plays a lot, I mean, he gets points. We don't need him to get you 30 points, 20 points. I mean, we want him to, but it's possible with Miami Dolphins. But overall, 3,000. Now, I did say that I had no value wide receiver. Well, I lied. Dontrell Inman is going to be one of my value wide receivers this week at 3,000. I'm going to have him in a bunch of rosters. I think he can help me get those stud tight ends that I want to get, those stud running backs that I want to get. This week is hard, and I think this is the guy this is this week's Rex Burkhead. I think a lot of people are going to be on probably on other positions, but I think Inman can provide some value at 3,000. That's my sick call of the week.
All right.
Hey, just to add to that, Travis Benjamin is currently doubtful. We obviously said Mike Williams has been ruled out, but Travis Benjamin is doubtful as well. So they got to go targets that don't go to Allen or Eckler. Got to go to somebody. 3,200 or whatever. Can't beat that.
Good call. All right, Tim, what is your sick call of the week?
My sick call of the week is going to be Cody Latimer. I've noticed a lot of talk, and rightly so this week, about Daniel Jones going up against that Redskins defense. But everybody's talking about Sterling Shepard or going down to Darius Slayton. And Cody Latimer got some full practice in this week, and I think he has the best wide receiver cornerback matchup this week. So I think that I'm going to go with Cody Latimer. He should be seeing a lot of Quentin Dunbar, who's just given up a ton of yards per route this year. So I like Cody this week.
All right, yeah, I actually had Darius Slayton written down as my sick call of the week until I saw Latimer was in. I figured they might split snaps at that third position there, so I had to take him off of my list. I do think Slayton can have that big play, but I don't want to play this my sick call. So my sick call, I'm going to give you his stats or his information first that I got written down before I give you his name. So the Chargers are 26th DVOA versus this position. They are near the bottom of the list here as far as DVOA versus this position. And 4 for 4 they have a stat called adjusted fantasy points allowed. Basically, they take, I don't even know how they do it. I'm not going to try to explain it, some kind of math equation. But adjusted fantasy points per game, they give up 16 adjusted points, the Chargers do, to this position. And that's going to be the guy with literally the word sick in his name, and that's Mike Gesicki, tight end for the Miami Dolphins at 2,600. It is Mike Gesicki week. This is his breakout week. We've been waiting almost 2 years for this. Gesicki has a breakout week against the Chargers this week, so play him at 2,600. Don't play a lot of them. Play maybe one lineup. It's a high-risk lineup, but I think I'll have at least one thing with him. I know Ryan, my co-host for the Tuesday show, gives me a hard time because I was pumping Gesicki in the offseason, and I kind of bought him everywhere in my Dynasty lineups, and now I'm regretting it. But this is the week. If he doesn't do it this week, then I'm going to drop him. He's done for me. But this is the week I think he breaks out. All right, guys.
I like that call. He's an athletic tight end. And if there's any game that he can break out, it's this game.
It'll be this game. It's kind of like O.J. Howard last week where I said if he can't beat the Giants, then he can't beat anybody. I think this is where Gesicki is. If he can't beat the Chargers, with that defense that they struggle against the tight end, I think that he can't beat anybody, and I'll give up on him. But this is the week that I think he does something for us. So, and Rosen looks for him a little bit more than I think Fitzpatrick did, because Fitzpatrick, once again, was a quarterback that threw to receivers. He didn't really throw to tight ends and running backs. He was all to the receivers. So Rosen will look for Gesicki a little bit more in this offense. So I think that he can have a breakout game this week. All right, let's go around and get our Twitter handles. Gerson, we'll go to you first. Twitter handle, and where can we find you at?
You can find me on the DFS Roundtable /FantasyG podcast Facebook group. You can also find me at Twitter at the FantasyG Pod. Yeah, that's the guy.
All right, good stuff. Tim, we'll go over to you. Where can we find you at? What's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, Twitter is at Keto DFS. That's KETO DFS.
All right, everyone's giving me shit in the Facebook chat because of my pick of my sick call, but I'm gonna stick by it. He's gonna get you at least 12 points this week. I'm gonna call it. Gesicki over 12 points this week. Of course, I'm Geoff.
How can you do shit? It's a sick call.
It's a sick call. Yeah, they're giving me shit for it. They're all like, they're all sick. They're all calling out for work tomorrow, but I'm going with it. All right, guys. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. You can find me in the DFS Roundtable. You can find me at GoingFor2.com. Pretty much everywhere on Facebook, Twitter, you can find me. Have a good night.
Run the damn ball!